Hello my friends, this is an Evinrude 35 and the water pump doesn't seem to be working. I don't see any telltale stream coming out of the motor, and I have no history of when the water pump impeller was changed last. So for my own confidence, I want to open this up, change and rebuild the water pump. So let me show you how you go about doing that. When you remove the lower unit, it breaks right here. You have to disconnect the shifter rod. The lower unit of the motor has to be removed in order to change the impeller on the fuel pump. So the shifter cable or rod is joined right here with two nuts. They have to be removed, and there's a keeper behind the upper one that has to be taken off so that the nut can come off, and then that allows the upper rod to slide through the casing. So I have two 1/2-inch bolts here, or wrenches here. You can find a tool for just about any job. This is one that I use on brake lines. I'll go across the tube and it fits, and I did find a wrench that's 13 millimeter. Close enough. I'll do it from this side. The lower unit is held on with 1/2-inch bolts. And anytime you put the similar metal together, there's a galvanic reaction. And you see this white powder that's coming out. That is the aluminum oxide. And when this is reassembled, these bolts should be greased to cut down on that galvanic reaction. There's one, and they should be a stainless. And I've already broken one bolt. That was what I was in fear of. That white powder. Units removed. This is going into the shop, and we're going to do the pump inside. Right here you can see the broken bolt. There's enough on there that I could get some vice grips. I'm going to soak it first with some PV Blaster. Hopefully that'll get in there and loosen up some of that powder, that aluminum oxide. I didn't have any PV Blaster, but I had some liquid wrench, and I gave all the holes a spray. This water tube was patched and held on with this looks like gasket rubber, and it was just glued. There was a break in it, had a hole, so I put a piece of heat shrink tubing over it and shrunk on there, and that looks like that will make a fit. It would be nice to have a new one, but a new one was $50 to $70 plus shipping. I'm using brake cleaner. A lot of wear. Good thing is all the impeller part is still there, so that's good. Needs a great cleaning. Gasket just falling apart. Here's the difference between a new pump and a worn pump impeller. Here I'm showing the condition of the pump that was in there, and if you can see all this debris that is collected. And if you're looking, making the comparison, the metal cup is not in this one, so that's one big difference. But you can see all this stuff that has accumulated in here. Also, this is where the output is. This is all rubber that came off of the impeller. You can see the wear. Two things go in before you put the metal cup in, and that'll be washers. Fat washer right here. You can see it in here. We got to locate it. There it is in the bag. And then there is a washer that goes in here. So let's locate those. Okay, fat washer here, and then another washer in there. The new stainless cup, before you insert it into the plastic housing, there's two things that you should do. And there's a O-ring that goes underneath. That should be oiled before you insert it. Okay, that one's in. Then right here, there's a bushing that might fall out, so there's an O-ring that seals. That's for one of the, and this is oil that I'm using. Goes into this one. Right there. Now the stainless cup, there's two little tabs right here, and there's two slots. You have to align those up. When it goes in properly, it will seat flush. Okay. Now, some recommend that you seal that I'm using a gasket sealer. We're going to apply some of this on the inside. Okay, when it's aligned properly, this will be all the way down flush, and this vent will go to the water port right there. Okay, now when that's assembled, we need to put this other gasket in, and we're using some gasket cement into this trough. Next, we want to take the impeller, and the inside of this needs to be lubricated, and what I'm going to use is Vaseline. Vaseline is petroleum jelly, and one of the purposes of this, main purpose, is when you fire the pump up, the pump itself is already lubricated. I'm going to put a little bit of the Vaseline on the underside, on both sides. Okay, now this is inserted inside. Well, we also need to put some oil. Okay, this is inserted by turning it counterclockwise. Like that. The water outlet, there is a rubber insert, has 2 tabs, and I hit this with some oil. And that slides in, those little ears plug in. Okay, right there. You can see that they're in now. Now we have to slide this rod without allowing the impeller to push out. So I'm holding the impeller. Okay, I pushed the rod until it crossed to the flat area. We align the flat area with that, and there's a new key. This is ready to insert onto the lower unit. We want to put the gasket on and the new plate. Here's the plate, and the gasket is with it. Next thing we want to do is put the water pump back on the housing, onto the lower unit. But before we want to do that, I want to make sure that these holes are clean. They had anti-seize in there and they were plugged. So I'm going to take a 1/4 tap, that's the size of the bolts, and I'm going to run these down into the hole to where it bottoms out. These are a blind hole, and I want to clean them. So clean all the debris out of the hole. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of grease and put on this, and what this will do when you run it in there is it will latch on to the debris rather than let it fall to the bottom. All the little shavings that it will be pulling out of the threads. So I had run this clean earlier, so it went in without any of the cutting action. But what that then will have done is latched onto any of the little dirt or debris or shavings and stuck into these flutes and pulled them out. Then just clean that off. So these are already cleaned out. Okay. Next, we have to put on the gasket between the pump and the housing. Okay, the new gasket, it came with the new plate for the water pump. And what you're going to notice is it is not perfectly symmetrical. So we have to put the gasket on first. So determine the direction where it lines up with all the holes. And we need to seal this with a gasket sealer. I was concerned with that, but this ridge is not touching anything. Okay, and this, we have to put the sealer on both sides. Okay. Okay, now we're going to insert the pump, and I'm going to hold this so it won't slide back. If it does, that key may fall out. This shaft is oiled, so now we place this. I got it going on the wrong direction. There we go. Feel it mesh the gears. Okay, now we need to run the screws in. So with these, I'm going to run an anti-seize on each one, and that will keep or reduce the galvanic reaction between the two dissimilar metals. Okay, here's what I'm using. We want to snug these up, and because it's plastic housing, we don't want to over tighten, and we do it in a crisscross pattern to bring the tension down evenly. When I'm tightening, I'm gripping here and pushing right at the neck. If I would grab back at the end of the handle, it would provide a little bit too much pressure. There are 2 O-rings left in the kit, and these 2 O-rings are for the drive shaft tube, and they will go around the end of the tube, and this end was repaired. It may not facilitate the use of the O-ring. Looks good. I'll put some grease on this. and both ends. Installation is just the reverse of taking it off. Before I run the bolts up into the upper unit, I will run my tap in the unit to clean out any of the corrosion that was in there. Since I did have trouble with a broken stud, I did get it out with heat. I want to make sure that all the threads are clean. I'll put anti-seize on all the bolts and reassemble. Here's the upper unit, and here's the 4 bolt holes, and this one is the one that was locked that I had to heat up. Okay, I'm going to run a tap on this, and I'm also putting some grease on the tap so that it will grab any of the chips and debris that might be in that hole. So I'll take it in. Gotta have it tight. I felt at the end it was doing some scraping, some gouging. And you can see the grease is dark now, and we want to wipe that off. Apply a little more grease. You could use Vaseline, that would work fine. And we do the same to all of the holes. I felt that scraping. Smooth and bottom. And again, sturdy. And wipe the grease out of the grooves. And we do each one that way. Now we're going to install the unit. There's 3 concerns here. This is the shifting rod, and then there is the water tube right here, and then the drive shaft. So we're going to start this feeding the shifter tube in. It's got to go through that real thick washer. Just went through it. There it goes. These are loaded with anti-seize. I'll get these started. Okay, before you get too far, and I knew that I was going to forget, you have to put the nut on the linkage bar. So I have to loosen this up and drop it back because I forgot to put that nut on the linkage. Got it? Now we got to put the lock collar on. Now I'm going to push the shift lever. forward, loosen, and reverse, push them together. That's it. Snug. Let's give her a go. Fire it up, see what happens.